Today on episode 11 of the Play Guitar podcast, I asked the question, how would you help a beginning guitarist get started? Also, we've got some great news and some listener feedback, so stay tuned. Welcome to episode 11 of the Play Guitar podcast. I'm Lee, and this is the podcast that's determined to make you a better guitar player. No matter if you're just starting out or you've been playing for years, this is the show that'll help you become the guitarist that you always wanted to be. On today's episode, we're going to talk about helping new guitar players get started in the right direction. You would think learning guitar should be so simple with all that we have available to us, but in my experience, we've got a new problem on top of just the regular difficulties of learning the guitar. It's overwhelm. There's just too much. There's too much information. What should I do to start? Who should I learn from? How can I keep from wasting my money and my time? Should I use a course or should I use books or videos? So I wanted to have a resource that I can point new players to, something that would block out all the noise and give you a game plan. And not in a way where I put, I force my preferences on someone. I wanted something that would put a guitar player in the right mindset for success. Something that would prepare them for the obstacles that are coming. And we know what's coming. We know what they're in for. It's tough. Learning the guitar can be much easier if you plan ahead. And if you see the pitfalls ahead of you, you can adjust so you don't have to struggle. Last week, I asked for your help. I asked you, how would you help a beginning guitarist get started? And thank you so much for your responses. This has been a great week for feedback, and I have a great listener feedback section later on in the episode. I have what I prepared to help new guitarists in the main section, and right after that, I go through the comments that are extremely helpful as well. It's very exciting for me to be able to get in touch with all of you, and I'm thinking of different ways that we could share our experiences on the guitar in a place that would be easy for your questions and comments to be checked out and answered. And for us to help answer questions others have. So I'm thinking of starting a Facebook group for the community we're building here on the show. Tell me what you think. Or if you have a better idea of a way to make this happen, I'm very open to suggestions. But the point being, thanks for your help with the show today, and I'm trying to make it easier for you to leave your comments and your questions. Last week, I teased a bit on about some really good news I got last week. I didn't want to say anything about it then, but now I think it's okay. Are you ready? I won something. It's something very cool that's really going to help the show get off the ground. So a few weeks ago, I entered something. I entered Pat Flynn's 2018 YouTube giveaway. If you're not familiar with who Pat Flynn is, here's a little bit from the Wikipedia page. It says, Pat Flynn is an American entrepreneur, blogger, and podcaster, best known for his blog and podcast, Smart Passive Income, where he conducts income experiments and shares the results. Smart Passive Income podcast is consistently ranked in the top 10 podcasts in iTunes business category. Pat's on the board of the nonprofit Pencils of Promise and is an advisor to tech startups Lead Pages and ConvertKit. And Forbes recognized Flynn as one of the 25 marketing influencers to watch in 2017. Forbes also said that his podcast has been downloaded over 10 million times. So, and I'm adding this in here. He's a musician as well. It's funny how musicians tend to gravitate towards other musicians in non-related things, life things. I've had realtors, mortgage brokers, all this stuff, and they all happen to be musicians. So that's interesting. Anyway, I've been a big fan of Pat's for a long time, and the things I've learned from him are the reason you're hearing me here today. So anyway, I saw that he had a contest where you get a virtual coffee, an hour one-on-one with him, and you get a spot in one of his upcoming YouTube videos. And I thought, man, that would be great. So I entered it and I went on about my life. I didn't think about it because I've really never won anything like this at all. So I just entered it and forgot about it, tell you the truth. And then last week, the day before I record the podcast, I record these podcasts on Tuesdays and for a release on Wednesday mornings. So this would have been Monday. I was getting ready to teach my afternoon guitar classes, and I got an email. And it said I was one of the 3 winners. And the first thing I thought is, this is big. It took me a few days for it to sink in. I was in shock. I haven't heard about the specifics yet, but I'm pretty excited about this. Also, in July, I'm attending a conference for podcasting. It's called the Podcast Movement. It's the biggest podcast convention. It's in Philadelphia this year, and Pat is one of the keynote speakers. So how awesome is that? So anyway, big news for me here, and I just wanted to share the good news with you, and I'll keep you updated along the way. I will definitely provide links to the video when it's time. So anyway, let's get back to the main topic. Our main topic today is how would you help a beginning guitarist get started? Go ahead with that. How would I help a new guitar player get started? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the steps that I would do if I was sitting down with a new guitar player. What would I say to them? How would I point them in the right direction? So the first thing I would do is congratulate them. I would tell them, you've taken your first steps towards learning the guitar. It's awesome. You're starting out in the right direction just by asking questions. You have an interest in the guitar and you're looking for the right way to learn. There's a lot of benefits and a lot of joys you get from playing the guitar. And I'm going to sit down and try and give you the tools you need to move forward on the guitar and how to experience those joys without getting frustrated. If you're willing to put in the time, you will definitely be rewarded. But first, there are some things you need to know to get the most out of your time. So then what I would say is talk a little bit about my experience when I started. I had an old guitar. In my attic, there was an old guitar. It was an old acoustic guitar that my mother had tried to play years ago. I was 12 years old, and I was so excited about the music and the guitar in general. And my mother and I went up to get the guitar. And after that, I spent several days checking it out. I was hooked. It just felt right to hold. I didn't know how to play it, but I was ready. After a week or so of trying to play it, I started to get discouraged. Every time I tried to press the strings down, my fingers hurt. And I didn't know how to tune it. So every sound I got out of it, honestly, it didn't sound very good. And I didn't know anyone that played the guitar. I didn't have anyone to go and ask questions to. So I soon learned that if I was really going to play this thing, I needed help. At the time I was learning guitar, I didn't have access to all the awesome resources that we have now. I needed something or someone to point me in the right direction. Eventually, my parents and I went down to the local music store and I signed up for lessons. And I'm glad I did. Everything started to make sense with a little help from someone who had been through this before. I realized that the guitar I had was not set up properly. I was working way too hard to push the strings down. And I quickly learned how to tune the guitar after that. And immediately, it started sounding a little bit better, although it was still difficult to play. So today, you have a lot more options than I did to get you started in the right direction. Let's take a look at the things that you need to know and the options available to today's guitar player. So what are the things you need to know before you get started playing guitar? So I'd say something like this. It's very exciting starting to play guitar for the first time. You hear all this great guitar music and you can see yourself having the time of your life making music, just like your favorite musicians. But there are definitely some things about the guitar that aren't as effortless as those great guitar players would make you think. Learning the guitar is going to take some time. Spending time with the guitar is very important. When you watch a great guitar player, you don't see all the many hours it took for them to get to that point. So, okay, then, how much time does it take to get good on the guitar? I get that question a lot. How long is it going to take till I'm good at this thing? And that's a good question, but there isn't a one-size-fits-all answer for you. For all the years I've been teaching, I've seen many different students learn at many different paces. Some move ahead quicker than others. But what I can say is that every student of mine that has spent the time with a regular daily practice routine, they all had great results on an ongoing basis. So another thing that you need to know is that playing the guitar is not easy. There are a lot of challenges to playing the guitar, especially at first. Getting your hands coordinated, building up the calluses on your fingertips, learning rhythm, and more. But all of these things, all these challenges are tough in the beginning, but they don't last long if you put the time in and keep at it. The last thing that you need to know is that a lot of people who start playing guitar, they quit shortly after they start playing. Some of them, they quit when they see it's going to require some work, and they just decide that's not what they want. That's not right for them. And others would really enjoy learning how to play the guitar, but they don't think they have the time it takes to get good on the guitar. And some others, they just don't know where to start at all. But they're gung-ho. They try to start anyway. And shortly after that, you get confused and frustrated, and then that's it. It's quitting time. So luckily for you, we're going to address all these situations here. And my goal is to save you the frustration of starting to learn guitar and give you the most straightforward path for you to get progressing and having fun with the guitar. Okay, so that's how I would start to, kind of my opening statement to someone who's learning the guitar, wants to learn the guitar, beginning on the guitar. So here's where to start. Here's what I would tell them where to start. Success on the guitar at an early stage is all about making some decisions, big decisions. And making these decisions is not hard with a little bit of help. Don't worry. They won't take long to make the decisions, and the ones you make will get you started in a direction that makes the most sense for you, for your situation. The first decision that you need to make is you need to decide the path that you're going to go on. You're going to need help getting started on the guitar. And as I said before, there are many resources available for you to take advantage of. Pick the one that's most comfortable for you. Here I'm going to let you know the most effective resources that will help you start your journey on the guitar. The first thing that you could look at is free videos and blog posts. The free route is the most popular one today. There are thousands of free lessons and web pages that'll show you how to do any number of things. And this can be a great starting point, especially if you're just wanting to see if the guitar is for you. There's a lot of great information available, but there are a lot of drawbacks to going the free route. The first drawback is that over time, it's easy to get frustrated and overwhelmed by all the content that's available. When using free content, you're basically guiding your own path on the guitar. You can pick anything you want to learn. You're in control. That sounds great, but the problem is that most don't realize that learning the guitar is like building a house. You need to learn certain foundational lessons before you can move on to more advanced things. It's the main reason people get stuck on the guitar. They're trying to learn something when they don't have the foundational skills to attempt it. The next drawback of going the free route is that it's too easy to jump ahead. When you're judging your own performance, you might miss something critical and think it's okay to move on to the next topic, but before you know it, you're stuck and you're not sure why. So what are some tips to get the most out of the free content that's available? My first tip would be to stick to one teacher. If you find you learn well from one person's video or blog post or whatever it is, take a look at the rest of the stuff they have. Take a look at the rest of their available content. If it looks like they have videos or blog posts that can take you where you want to go, stick with them. The method that they have might just be the thing that gives you that foundation you need to move forward on the guitar. If you jump around too much from teacher to teacher, it's easy to miss the important things, and it's easy to get confused. If they don't have anything available to take you farther on the guitar, you might want to spend some time finding another way to go. If you do find some free resources that you like, don't be afraid to ask a lot of questions. Use the comment section below the video or on their blog posts. I would think that you should get good responses to your questions from either the author or other viewers that are commenting. If you don't get the answers you need, then it might be time to find another path. Okay, so the next thing that people could choose would be guitar lessons, the guitar lesson books and DVDs. Guitar books have been around for a very long time. At one point, that was all you could buy to help you on the guitar. Books are great. I've learned a lot from several different guitar books. In recent times, though, video has become more popular. Some people learn better being shown what to do. So many guitar teachers have DVDs for sale, and they teach a lot of different things. One of the drawbacks from learning from books and DVDs that there is no way to ask questions. If you don't understand something, there's not usually a way to get in touch with the teacher to get help. The next thing that you could use is in-person private lessons. One-on-one lessons have been the standard for learning guitar for as long as the guitar has been around. You get the full attention of the instructor. And if you're lucky, your instructor has a great method to help you advance on the guitar. Unfortunately, not all guitar teachers are created equal. There are some that can really help you, and there are some that could actually do more harm than good. It's best to find out as much as you can about a guitar instructor before you sign up for lessons. Also, lessons can be pretty expensive, and it can be out of the price range for a lot of beginner students. The next thing I would recommend is small group lessons. Lately, there's been the trend of teachers offering group lessons, there are many benefits to this. Group lessons are more affordable than private lessons. Also, learning along with others takes a lot of the pressure off for some students. Not being the center of attention all the time for the whole lesson, it can be more comfortable and create a good learning environment for some people. Small group sizes seem to be the most effective. When a group gets too large, it can be really distracting, and you definitely won't get the attention you need to get your questions answered. Okay, the next thing that you could pick to learn from are online lesson sites. Over the last several years, there have been more and more online lesson sites popping up. These are great ways to combine the best parts of video lessons with the best parts of private lessons. You'll usually get a well thought out method of learning, and one that will take you from a beginner player, hopefully all the way to an advanced player. You also get the benefit of being able to watch the videos over and over and over again. So basically what it is it's a collection of one teacher's videos, and you kind of go in order the way they would think would teach you the best. Most lesson sites have a way for you to contact or show the teacher your progress for more interaction. And these are usually pretty affordable and a good idea for someone who wants to get the most out of their money, the best bang for their buck. Okay, so once you've decided which way you would think would be the best fit for you to learn, it's time to get your guitar. So if you haven't already, the first decision you need to make is what kind of guitar would you like to buy? There's two types of guitars that you can get, really, when it boils down to it. You've got acoustic guitars and electric guitars. Acoustic guitars are the ones that you see that have the big hole under the strings. They're hollow, and they're great for strumming songs. And because they're hollow, they amplify themselves. Because of this, they're great to practice with and bring them along with you wherever you go to play wherever you are. You don't need to bring an amplifier to be heard in at least a small room setting. The downside of starting with an acoustic guitar is that the strings tend to be thicker. This means they're more difficult to push down. You'll need to build some hand strength and toughen up your fingertips. Some like to start with nylon string acoustic guitars, and the nylon strings are a lot easier to push down than the regular metal guitar strings. The other type of guitar that you could purchase is an electric guitar, and electric guitars are usually made from a solid piece of wood. Because of this, they don't amplify themselves. It would be hard to hear an electric guitar over several people speaking normally. New electric guitar players will usually also purchase a small practice amplifier. When you plug the electric guitar into an amplifier, the sound of the guitar comes through the speaker of the amplifier, and you and you can control how loud it is and some basic tone controls and some sounds of that. So both of these types of guitars come in different sizes, and getting the size of the guitar that's right for you is very important. Guitars are sold in a 1/2, 3/4, and then full size. 1/2 and 3/4 size guitars they're generally for kids, and they usually are outgrown pretty quickly. By about 11 to 12 years old, most transition to the full size guitars. And the size of full size guitars, they can vary as well. There are thicker, thinner, wider, longer, lighter, and heavier guitars. So with so much to choose from when you're trying to pick an electric guitar, a trip to your local guitar store is in order. Just go in and try a whole lot of different types of guitars. You will quickly find the guitar that feels right to you. So after you get your new guitar, you need to make sure it's set up properly. This is a big step that most people miss. Once they buy the guitar, they're out, but you need to make sure the thing is set up properly. A lot of manufacturers of beginner guitars, they don't take the time to adjust the guitar properly. Guitars have many adjustments that can make them play a lot easier, but you're going to need help for this step. Find someone local that you know who knows a bit about guitars. Ask them if there's anything they could do to make your guitar play easier. If you don't know anyone that knows anything about guitars, take it to a local music store and ask if they could help you set up your guitar. It's best to do this in the beginning so that you don't start off practicing on a guitar that's difficult to play. Sometimes the strings that you get on a new guitar will be pretty hard to play. And a hard to play guitar, that's no fun at all. The strings that the guitar come with, they may not be the best fit for you. Heavy gauge strings are tough to press down, and you have to have hand strength. There are many different gauges of strings, though. For beginners, it's always better to start out with lighter gauge strings. They're much easier on the fingers, and you'll have plenty of time on down the road if you want to move up to heavier gauge strings. There's no rush. Sets of strings are commonly named by the gauge of the smallest string, which is the high E string. And examples of light gauge strings for an acoustic would be a pack of 11s. Those are pretty light for an acoustic. And that would mean that the skinniest string, the high E string, that would be a 0.011, that's measured in thousandths of an inch. So that would be 11 thousandths of an inch. An example of a light gauge strings for an electric guitar would be a pack of 9s. And that would mean that the high E string would be 0.009 or 9 thousandths of an inch. If you're not sure what gauge strings are on the guitar that you have, take it to a music store, have them check it out. If you have heavy strings, it's very easy to purchase a pack of new light gauge strings and have them put them on for you. Okay, so we have to decide next, when are you going to play the guitar? When are you going to practice? Practicing is important. And to move forward on the guitar, you're going to need a good practice routine. If you're super busy and can't find any time to practice, learning the guitar is going to be extremely challenging. In all of my method books that I supply to my students for my group lessons, I have a small schedule page for practice time. And this is where you can just write down the time of day for each day that you're going to practice. If you know that a certain time in each day you watch TV or you play video games, you may want to repurpose that time for your guitar practice. Some like to practice in the morning and other people like to practice later on in the day. It doesn't really matter as long as you stick to a regular schedule. I always recommend sticking to a shorter daily practice routine as opposed to a monster long weekend practice session. I say this a lot. But here we go again. Do you remember taking tests in school? Say you get a test coming up and you've got a week to study, but you put it off till the night before. You stay up most of the night and you study all night and you take the test the next day. You might have done great on the test, but what happens the minute you walk out of that class? You forget everything you learned. You struggled to keep the information in your short-term memory all night, and now that you're done, that information is gone. But the opposite happens when you just study a little bit every day. The very act of repetition commits the information to long-term memory. It's there for good. And that's what we want for the guitar. We want to keep everything that we've learned, and we want to have it ready to go anytime we need it. And it's fun playing music when you don't have to stress or you don't have to worry about whether you're going to do it correctly. Okay, so the next decision we have to make, we have to find your space. The last decision you need to make before you start with guitar is where are you going to practice? I know that when I started, I was more comfortable practicing away from other people. I practiced in my room and I was able to have fun and concentrate without worrying about what other people thought. But you might be the opposite. You might be comfortable practicing in a place in the house or where others are around. It's up to you, but just find a space. Make sure the space you pick to practice is comfortable to you. Also, what I would recommend is get a guitar stand. Pick one up. Some people also like to buy guitar hangers. That way you keep your guitar up on the wall. Either way, it's important that you don't keep your guitar in the case. Why? Because when the guitar is in the case, it's very easy to forget about it. And when you forget about the guitar, it's easy to forget about practicing. But also, guitars look great. I love having my guitars out on display. A lot of you have seen my studio, and there's guitars all over the walls. It's fun. Okay, so those are the 4 decisions that I recommend a new guitarist make before diving into learning the guitar. So let's summarize those. The first is you need to decide with which method you're going to learn. Is it going to be free videos and blogs, or is it going to be books or in-person lessons or small group lessons or online lesson sites? Next, you got to decide what guitar you'd like to learn on, whether it's an electric or acoustic. Purchase it and have it set up properly. The third is decide where you're going to practice. And the third was decide when you're going to practice. And the last is decide where you're going to practice. Once you have all this decided, it's time to start. Get your guitar. Sign up for lessons if that's what you decide to do. Set up your practice area. Clear the time you need to get started and start practicing. But when you do start practicing, here are some things to keep in mind. The goal is to progress on the guitar, but not at the expense of having fun. That's right, fun. So I'd like to give you some tips to keep this fun. Okay, here's some things that would help you with. Don't let yourself get overwhelmed with all there is to learn. There's a lot to learn out there. Let's just focus on what you're doing at the time. And don't compare yourself to other players that have been playing for a long time. I will bet you that they didn't sound so hot when they started playing guitar. Okay, so the next thing I recommend is make sure that you don't always work on the things that you're struggling with. Take some time in each practice session to play something that you've already learned that makes you feel good, something that sounds good, something that makes your ears happy. You know, if you're just playing things that are just sound rough all the time, it takes the fun out of it. Now, that's important. And I talked in several of these episodes about splitting your guitar practices in 2. In the first part, work on the stuff that's difficult that you're trying to learn. In the other part, have some fun, work on something that sounds good. It's important. The next thing I'd recommend is try and find some other players that are in the same boat as you, that are on your level. Maybe get together to play, or at least get together to talk about guitar, your experiences learning the guitar. Next, and when you learn something that excites you, say you're working on something and you're doing it well, and it's fun, you get excited about that. Something that even impresses yourself when you play on the guitar, share it with others, play it for someone. You never know, you might even get a few kind words in return for sharing it, for playing it for them. And I want to tell you from experience, hearing a few kind words can really inspire a guitar player. It always works. So in conclusion, you're going to need help when starting guitar, but that's okay. There's a lot of help available for you. Just realize that it's a narrow path that will keep you moving forward on the guitar without any frustration. And it's easy to want to jump off that path and try and play some very cool advanced things, but just stick to your plan. It won't take long till you get there. It won't be long before you're ready to start tearing it up on the guitar. And so that's what I would recommend. That's my speech to someone who's starting to play guitar. What do you think? I think it's pretty good. I'm heading more for the mindset. I see a lot of guitar players who are discouraged, and these are the things that kind of push them forward, set them on the right path. And this is what I would say to somebody who is sitting down in front of me. It's what I came up with today. I think it's pretty good. And if you are a beginner and listening to this, and you do have any questions, you're always welcome to contact me. Leave a comment on the show notes page. The show notes for this one is www.playguitarpodcast.com/011. Or to make it easier, just go to my contact page, the same website, playguitarpodcast.com/contact. I'm happy to help you get pointed in the right direction. Okay, so that's it. I'm going to head on to the feedback section where I'm going to start talking about some of the things that you guys sent in to help new guitar players get started. So hold on for the listener feedback section. This is listener feedback. This is where if you have a comment or a question I can help you with, I will try my best to help you. To get in touch, you can always email me at feedback@playguitarpodcast.com, or you can use the comments on the show notes page, or use the contact form on my site. But the coolest way to leave a question for the show is by my SpeakPipe voicemail. When you go to the main page of playguitarpodcast.com, to the right of the screen, you'll see a button called Send Voicemail, and that will allow you to record a short message for me to use on the show. You can also get to this voicemail by my contact page. Okay, so that main section, that was my idea of pointing new guitarists in the right direction. But what was yours? The first I received was from Andrew Lother, and this was on Twitter. Andrew says, new students need a reference point, such as a guitar teacher, be it online or face-to-face, to set them on the right path, e.g., correct a basic chord or scale. But once a student is set on the right path with the correct foundation, they can continue to build on this. Thank you, Andrew. That's very true. I think establishing a strong foundation is so important, and it's difficult to know what the knowledge and skills you need as a beginner are when you don't have guidance. When things are just one way, it's just you learning from some sort of content. It's too easy for you to just move forward before you're ready. And then that puts you in a ditch, gets you stuck in the mud. Okay. Thank you, Andrew. The next is from an email I received from Chris Ward, who has been awesome sharing his progress on the guitar. I really been enjoying talking to Chris. And Chris says, ideas for beginners. 1, know how to tune the guitar, or someone who does, and also know when the guitar isn't in tune. Number 2, know the notes of the open strings and the order. Number 3, teach a simple melody on one string. And number 4, set short, medium, and long-term goals. These are the ideas that came into Chris's mind after listening to the podcast, with the smiley face with a wink. These are great as well, Chris. I didn't touch on a lot of the specifics. I went more for the general mindset, but what Chris touches on here are some of the essential things you do need as a beginner. You need to know how to tune. We all take that for granted, but I can't tell you how many new students I have who come in with snap strings that they need to be fixed because someone was experimenting with the tuners, and those strings can only be cranked so far. Sometimes I think they should put in some eye protection in these starter guitar packs. You get a guitar and a cord and strap and amplifier. I think you need to have some goggles on there to keep from getting hit with the strings that are snapping off like crazy. But Also, getting some sort of melody or riff as soon as possible. It's very important. You need that to keep people playing. People need to hear something familiar coming from their guitars. So those are great ones. And thank you, Chris. This one here is a comment, and I got this one from Podbean, and this was from Soul Creep 78, and he says that he thinks the parking in guitar method is the best way to start, and then move on to something more personal. And I think that's very good, especially if you're interested in classical guitar. But even if you're not, the Christopher Parkening method it's very good at getting guitarists up and running. My background is not classical. My background was jazz music, well, rock guitar, blues guitar, and then I went to school for jazz. But I didn't start that way. But when I went to University Arts, the jazz and the classical guitar departments, we shared a lot of classes together. I made a lot of friends in the classical guitar department, and I learned a lot about the method and the thinking of classical guitarists. And I agree, the parking method it's a great way to get beginners headed in the right direction. Okay, I also received an awesome email from Ryan Smith. Thank you, Ryan, for the kind words. I'm glad you're getting a lot out of the show, and I'm glad the show's helping you. And let me know if you've got any more any questions or anything I can help you with. I'd be happy to. And finally, I received a comment from Alan, and this was on one of the episode show notes pages on my website. And Alan says, "Hi Lee, this podcast is helping my playing quite a bit. I appreciate you creating and sharing it. In episode 8, you were playing a D to an A to a C to a G chord progression. And when you were playing over the C chord, you changed scales from D major to G to avoid that C sharp. My question is, how do you pick a good scale? Would an A minor scale work, or can anything with a C note work? Thank you for your help." And I've had a few questions about this. And so I thought for the rest of the show, I'd take some time to explain my process about this and some other ways of soloing over this chord progression. But first, I want to read you part of what I replied to him with. I said, "I chose this chord progression for a reason. It seems so simple, but it's very tricky. There are several ways to approach this, but to directly answer your question, I wouldn't just play anything with a C note in it. The easiest way that most people would play over this chord progression is a D major pentatonic over the whole thing. If you do that, this bypasses the whole C sharp to C situation. The notes in D major pentatonic are D, E, F sharp, A, and G. If you were going to stay with pentatonics, the next thing that you could do that's common, you play the D major pentatonic over the first two chords of the D and the A, and then you could go kind of bluesy with a switch to a D minor pentatonic over the C and G chords. But there's something you have to pay attention to when you do this. You have to be careful with this because in the D minor pentatonic, you have an F note, and it can sound very sour if you don't bend it a little bit towards that F sharp. And I'm going to demonstrate that in a minute once we get through this. But what I told him next is, but we weren't trying to play pentatonics. We were trying to find the full scale that matches this best. From the two problem areas that we talked about, this is the C to a C sharp. That's a problem area. And then the F and the F sharp. Those are the two places we got to worry about here. The path I chose in the last podcast was to think of the D and the A as the key of D major, and then to think of the key of the chords C and G as a temporary change to G major. And your other question about the A minor scale is best answered here. The A minor scale comes close to working over the C and G chords, but if you listen to it, one of those notes sounds pretty funny. It's an F. It has that same sour sound that it did when we played it in the minor pentatonic scale. It just doesn't fit. It sounds better as an F sharp. Well, if we use an A minor scale and just change that F to an F sharp, that A minor scale becomes a Dorian. And the notes in A Dorian this is modes, and we'll get to that on down the road. But the notes in the A Dorian are the same notes. They share the same notes as the G major scale, which is what I played in the podcast the other day. So it's really tricky to describe this in text. And you're probably thinking that right now as I'm reading you what I said him. So I'm going to start playing through this stuff here for the rest, for what we have left. We have about 5 minutes left. I'm going to play through this so you can hear what it sounds like. So I'm going to go grab my guitar. Okay, first let's try the pentatonic approach. The first one we're going to do is the major pentatonic over the whole thing. And then the second is going to be the minor pentatonic over the last two chords. So here's the major pentatonic. Now let's try the major pentatonic on the first two chords and minor pentatonic on the last two. Minor pentatonic. So that was the pentatonic approach, which is easy. It sounds great. But we were doing the full scales. We were switching from D major to G major. But one of the questions that you asked is, instead of that G major, could you just do an A minor, since that has a C in it? So I'm going to try playing over the first two chords, just regular D, and then over the last two chords playing A minor. Let's see what happens. So let's start off with D major, and then we're going to switch to the A minor that you talked about. So far, so good up until this note. That's that F. There's A minor. So this time through, I'm going to change that F to an F sharp, and that will put it into the Dorian mode. Here's D major, A Dorian. Sounds a lot better. So even trying to use the A minor scale and changing it to fit still takes us into the territory of G. It takes us into playing the temporary key change using the G major scale. So why does the G major scale work so well over the last two chords? To remind you, the chords are D, A, and then C and G. So I'm thinking of the D as the 1 chord in D major and the A as the 5 chord. When we move to the C chord, I treat that as the 4 chord in the key of G. And then when we get to the G chord, that's the temporary 1 chord before we start all over again and go back to D and go back into D major. If this doesn't make sense to you, classifying the chords as a number, don't worry. I'll be having a show in the future that talks about chord progressions and how to understand a certain chord's function in a key. And we give these chords numbers, and it helps us understand what their function is in the chord progression in a certain key. So you see, I told you it was a tricky chord progression. Seems simple, but it's not. But I hope I helped you understand it a bit better, and I gave you a couple other ways to play it as well using the pentatonic scales. So that is a wrap. This has been a fun episode. I've been waiting to do this one for a long time. It's been super fun, and I'll get back next week to to normal, to regular, with the creating the band and keeping you all informed on all the other exciting things that are going on. So thanks for joining me today for the Play Guitar Podcast. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to the show in iTunes or in your podcast player. Also, I'd really appreciate if you could leave a review for the show on iTunes. If you're interested in online lessons as well, go on over to playguitaracademy.com and join my early adopter list to get news on the opening of the site and an early adopter discount. Also, follow me on all my different social media pages. Links to them are at www.playguitarpodcast.com. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next episode.